Be our moderator. Some of the departments sent in some questions. The police department sent some questions. Some other people sent questions. So he's going to go down the list. This is just, we're going to have the professionals. If you guys would come up and sit behind the table here, and then we're going to have Matt sit up here, if you don't mind. Yeah. We have Kelly with the 800 system, and Bill, or Bob Simpson.
Okay.
Yeah. We'll give you a new name today.
And Mike Dyer with UCI.
Coming around that way, all right.
Not with John.
Mike.
How you doing, Kelly? I'm Bob Simpson.
Hi, Bob.
Nice to see you.
So I'm taking attendance. Council.
Get on
Well, they raise
back.
their
All right,
hand.
I'll scoot that.
Council guys over in, so I can make sure I see everybody. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So you have 4. Okay.
Well, we're not, this is just information.
But it's still, I have to record things that happen in the open public. It doesn't have to be, but I have to.
I'm gonna sit over here.
Set the corner where I can see if that's all right. And then bother you.
No.
Alrighty, I'll start real quick and just introduce myself as Matt Overlease. I know several in the room, several I don't. I wear a lot of different hats. My hat today, and I'll get into that just a little bit, is just I'm a neutral person. I can say that I'm here because I'm ignorant, and I don't mean that I'm ignorant as I'm stupid. I'm ignorant because I'm uneducated. There's a lot of stuff going on right now. I was a person that didn't know much about either way, so we were looking for a unbiased, neutral moderator. So I'm not here to represent a certain person or a certain group or anything like that. I've got a list of pre-prepared questions that I want to go through, and well, I shouldn't say, let me phrase that, not that I want to go through. They were questions presented to me. They're not in any, should I say, certain order per se, but I do need a couple things from the group, because of what I was tasked to do was just keep it moving, keep it orderly, and let's try to get the facts out, okay? So I just want to be clear that I don't have any preconceived notions. These questions, I'm going to ask them as best I can verbatim as they were presented to me. So I heard a preacher say one time, don't hear a message I'm not preaching. So I'm not insinuating that I'm for or against any certain thing in the way these questions are presented, okay? So I guess you just have to trust me that I'm bringing this in as much of a unbiased manner as possible, because I literally do not have an opinion at this point. So with that said, we've got a list of several questions. If I did my math right, we can spend about 5 or 7 minutes on each question. I'm going to try to keep it moving as best I can. I am going to ask, what I have been tasked to do is let's ask the experts, let them respond. I know each of you are going to have questions. If it's pertinent, write it down. Please do not interrupt them. And if you would like to say something, say that for the end. I mean, is everybody all right with that? I think for our sake of time, to keep it moving, we've got to keep the conversation at this front table, and I'm going to do my best to keep it moving. Some of these questions, I don't know who to direct it to, some I won't, so feel free to jump in. This is not, I want to be real clear about it, this is not a sales meeting, and this is not a meeting for opinions. We're interested in facts, okay? And that's what I want to focus on. Please forgive me, I don't mean anything by it, but if we get salesy or opinionated, I'm going to ask you to move on, okay? Just because that's what I've been asked to do. With that said, I'd like to jump into it. If you could each take 30 seconds or a minute, I know you've got a lifetime of accomplishments, but try to narrow that down for the sake of time. Tell us who you are, what you do, and then we'll just jump right into the questions. Everybody good with that? Good. All right. Yes, sir.
Michael Dyer, with Electronic Communication Systems, or ECS. We've been in business 33 years. FCC licensed technician, neighbor licensed technician. I sit on the advisory board of the electronics department at Vincennes University and at Ivy Tech in Bloomington. We're a very technical company. We maintain over 500 police, fire, and EMSs throughout southern Indiana and 10 countywide dispatch centers. And I'm glad to be here today.
I'm Bob Simpson. I'm with Kenwood Communications. I'm the Regional Territory Manager. I cover Kentucky, Indiana, and part of Ohio. I've been with them over 20 years, and I'm here to help find the best solution for you all. I'm out of Louisville. I'm very, very familiar with Scottsburg. I've been traveling Indiana for the last 20 years, the entire state. So I'm very familiar with your area, and we just want to help you find the best solution.
Hi, I'm Kelly Dignan. I'm the Executive Director of the Integrated Public Safety Commission, sometimes referred to as the state system. I do want to make a point that it's a shared system ran by a commission. It is not the state-owned system. We have 13 commissioners that sit on it, represented by sheriffs, chiefs of police, fire, EMS, senator, and a representative on that commission. So we are a shared state system, no fees. We are one of the few, if not only the only state that doesn't have fee-based for you. It's buy the radio and show up. And then the other thing I just want to make a point of is I don't have a dog in this hunt. If any of you knew Dave Smith, our previous director, that was one of his sayings. I have no dog in this hunt. If you come on and use the safety system, I have another client to make happy. But I get no funds. You don't pay me anything. I don't get any extra dollars. If you don't come on the system, I don't lose anything. There's nothing for me to gain here. I'm just here to help you understand the shared network that you have access to at no cost to you to use. There's no user fees.
Scott Marr, RCS Communications. We've been around since 1952. We've got solutions of all nature. We represent Motorola and Kenwood. Our interest here is to provide you a solution that's going to best work for you. Like Kelly said, we got, no dog in the fight. You all decide which direction you want to go based on the facts you gather, and we're just here to support that.
All right. And I'm Jared Baker. I'm the Motorola account manager here for Scott County and about the bottom half of the state of Indiana. Grew up in a small rural southern Indiana town, similar to Scottsburg, even a little bit smaller. I've been with Motorola about 8 years now. Spent the first 5 years or so as a RF system engineer, designing IPSC add-on sites and conventional repeater sites and those sorts of things, and moved into the account management role about 3 years ago now. Thanks for having us.
I'm Joe Richardson with ERS. I've been with the company 6 years now. We represent Motorola in the central area. Came to this job 6 years ago after 31 years in law enforcement, so heavy user for my career, and happy to be here as well. Hope we can get the solutions for y'all. Thank you.
Perfect. Is there any other, Jeff, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you want to sit at the table just because you're an expert in the standpoint of you've seen this thing from the beginning? And
I've seen it, we use both of them. I'm good.
Okay. I guess we can defer to you if there are specific questions for you, because I anticipate there could be.
If I could point out, our statewide interoperability coordinator, Sally Fay, is here. And then also our field service manager, John Asher, is also here. So if there's, get into the weeds about the system, those are the two.
Well, and I don't want to be hastily, but again, there are a lot of questions, so we've got to move fast. By no means do I want to cut out any important stuff, but for that said, let's get down to the meat and potatoes. And again, no specific order. I'm reading from a list with no connotations. But what is the difference between the proposed new low-band system and the current low-band system that we have? And I have some follow-ups with that.
So that would be directed to me, probably. Can everybody hear me okay? So the proposed, and I can stand if you want, but the proposed system versus the current system. The current system that you have is a single repeater for sheriff, for fire, is one repeater for the county, for each agency. That was put in about 10 years ago. That was an upgrade from the analog system. At the time, the analog system didn't even have a repeater. It was just a base station at dispatch and simplex communication. So that was an upgrade 10 years ago. That was kind of spearheaded when they did the narrowbanding, that a lot of departments lost 30 to 40% of the range when they went to the narrowbanding by the FCC mandate. So the repeater was actually an improvement on what you had 10 years ago. Today, the proposed system is putting 3 repeaters instead of 1 throughout the county. The furthest way that you would be from any tower would be 6 miles. The bigger part is that is your talkback communications, and they're simulcasted all on the same frequency. So you basically would be tripling the towers that you have in both transmit and receiving back throughout the county to give you blanketed coverage.
Okay, so this is a replacement system, not an upgrade.
This is a replacement system on the infrastructure side. All of the 300 plus radios throughout the county that are on Next Edge Digital they can go right onto the system. So that you don't have to replace any radios. This will just be replacing the repeater infrastructure. And part of that proposal was also upgrading the communication shelters. Some of the shelters that you have, like on one of them, it's just like more of a barn type shed, versus these are professional shelters, 8 foot by 8 foot with 1.5 ton air conditioning, with heating, concrete slab. I think alone out of that, they're probably $30,000 per shelter. So they're made to withstand environments, to be able to where you have lightning and grounding around the system, to be able to be a vast improvement on what the current shelters that you have as well.
Anybody else have anything to add to that? Is it possible or feasible to upgrade the current low band system versus a replacement?
That's what the proposal is. Basically, you're only you're utilizing the existing equipment technology and you're simulcasting it. So not everything has to be replaced. That's why when that was sent out, some people came back and said they couldn't compete on that. You started down the road with VHF and you started building out a system, even though it was conventional. Technology has allowed that to be simulcast. Simulcast has a huge advantage, which you saw in Brown County, the people that went and attended. You saw the difference in coverage, and it's making a huge difference in how VHF propagates, how we can cover areas, and it is basically going to accomplish what would take 10 800 sites to give you the same type of coverage. It would take a lot more than 3, let me put it that way. I don't want to misspeak on an exact number, but the bottom line is, with the terrain, we're not above Indianapolis where it's all flat land.
Okay, and I want to reiterate something. I don't know, but if that's a fact, that's great. If that's an opinion, let's try to minimize that. You know, you said 10 versus 1, because I don't know the
That's why I
difference.
recount the number.
Okay.
But it's clear that it would take many more. When you build an 800 system, it has to be built more along the lines of a cellular type system. The frequency itself demands that, period. That's why you have 126 sites in the state of Indiana.
No, we have 126, actually, we have 190 sites in the state of Indiana.
For
because
90 counties, right?
92 counties. And we provide 98% coverage on the ground with portable. That's why there's so many sites. It's not because we have to have that many sites. And then there are certain counties that have a simulcast system like they're proposing here that want in-building coverage with their portables. And that's why there's simulcast sites in those areas. So it doesn't, it's not a cellular type system. You can have one site and it be an 800.
Okay.
But it won't cover an
By
entire
the way,
county.
also Brown County is using the safety system. Brown County Public Safety is using the safety system. Brown County School Corporation is using the Next Edge system. Just for clarification on that.
Okay, I've heard Brown County mentioned a couple times.
It's not public safety, Brown County.
What system was tested? Was it the?
Oh, I can answer that
Okay.
question. It's absolutely used. On Sheriff Sutherland, we put the system in. I mean, and they have dual band mobiles. They do have dual band mobiles. They have.
You can't program a radio, a single radio on the 800 system and your system at the same time. Your system's not a P25 system. Yours is a closed proprietary system. So they can't have dual programmed Motorola radios on your system and my system.
They
It's
don't
not
have
possible.
Motorola, yes, they cannot.
They have
But with the
Kenwoods.
Kenwood, they very much can. And
Kenwood,
we
you would
took
be
a
restricted to
group
Kenwood.
from here up there to show them the system. So this is not hearsay. There's a group from your county that went up to see the Brown County system. So all we need to do is talk to those people. And they can tell you whether or not there were dual deck mobiles. They will tell you the performance of the system.
The Sheriff's
This is not our
Department and
opinion.
Public Safety's primary way of communicating is the safety system.
And we're not saying we have to replace the primary, we're trying to give you a system that works for your county. Do you have Indianapolis's budget? You don't. You know, I know Scott County pretty well. The bottom line is, you have to, the first step is buying the system. Then you have to live with maintaining it. Do you have the budget to do that? And if so, if you go the 800 route, how fast can you get there? Because this system's been in place 21 years. It started building 21 years ago.
Oh, excuse me, Bob. So on Brown County, I put in their new dispatch center 3 months ago. So I know what their dispatch is, primary and secondary. And where it comes into, we don't really look at it as a primary or secondary issue, is because one can go down and now secondary becomes primary and vice versa. And with that, so we put in a Telex 3-position dispatch system. Our company did that. We put in the 800 dual band radios and their mobiles. I delivered personally Kenwood VHF portables. They have where they can work both systems. And that's where the whole idea with most of it, and I would say that IPSC even says that, to where we want to have primary and secondary systems, and in some counties, it's if there's proper 800 coverage, 800 can be primary. In Scott County, and in Scott County does not have one 800 meg tower. They have 5 surrounding county towers.
Correct.
But there is not one tower located. So everything is from the state standpoint about, I agree with you totally on saying 95% coverage in the state, but that doesn't mean 95% coverage for each county.
98% coverage on the ground with a
Okay,
portable.
but that doesn't mean 98 or 98%.
And by the way, just one quick correction. You're quoting IPSC to IPSC, just so you realize that. IPSC doesn't say you should have this and you should have this. IPSC says, here's what we can offer. You should do what's in the best interest of Scott County. I don't know what your operation is. I will never tell you, you should be doing this, or this is what we recommend. We say, here's the system. If you want to use it, you use it. It's user-free. User fees, there is no user fees. It's free to use. If you want to build it out even further, here's your options to be able to build it out even further for your county, if that's what you choose to do. Annual maintenance for those sites that get built out, we'll pay for those annual maintenance. But we're not going to tell you what's in the best interest of Scott County. That's your job to do. We're only going to give you, here's the system we manage and maintain.
Okay, you guys have hit on several little pieces of the other questions, so I'm going to try to work it in as we can just to keep it moving. But I think you answered this already, but the question is, will the current low-band handheld radios such as the NX200 be compatible and be able to be programmed with the new system?
Yes.
That answer was yes. Okay. What is the...
And the demo, the people that went to Brown County, we actually had that they had their Kenwood radios that they use here. We actually programmed their radios on the system to prove that point.
So those radios, some of those are 10 plus or minus years old. What is the expected lifespan of those units?
They're still being produced today. So, I mean, it's one of those, it's a very dependable unit. Part of it with chip shortages and supply chains and all of that has changed a lot of different people's perspective on what models and that. But it's still a current, even used radio. So I would, as far as that, I mean, if it would be falling apart, I mean, it shows that it's pretty durable actually with electronics. My refrigerator only lasts 8 years, and not being used as much and dropped in that. But I would say that, you know, we've had some radios that go 15, 20 years if they're properly maintained.
I didn't mean to set you up for an opinion, I know that's a moving number, but is there an industry standard?
7 to 10 is typically stated as the industry standard of a lifespan of a portable radio.
Okay, is that
Properly maintained.
I'm sorry,
Properly maintained,
should
7
that,
to 10.
well, that's not on here, never mind.
Perhaps a bigger question too is what is the replacement cost versus switching to a new system and the replacement cost that would be there.
Is low band a public safety radio network, or is it a commercial, or is it for commercial and or industrial? And if, whatever the answer is, are there potential issues for that in the future and why?
There are no potential issues with low band. Public safety started out on low band and had utilized UHF and VHF accordingly. 800 was seen as this great leap forward in audio quality and capability for some data applications and things of that nature. But there's nothing inferior about VHF. It's been a part of the landscape since two-way radio came to be. The Indiana State Police, when I started, were using low band, 60 megahertz with an 8-foot antenna on the back trunk of the car, on the side. So it's been utilized at every level.
So let me, sorry, Bob, let me make a statement on that, because people that are, counties that have the VHF, I would consider, if police and fire are using it, I consider it a public safety system. And I'll even go into...
Is the frequencies public safety protected frequencies? Are they out of the public safety band?
Yeah, they're out of police and fire. They're coordinated through the FCC on police and fire VHF bands, yes. And so I can tell you Harrison County, which is just right down another county, we're currently putting in a $2.2 million 7-site VHF simulcasted system, and they're buying 809 radios to go on that system. If you're trying to think of where this is not, I just want to make sure that you know this answer, or I'm answering this question correctly. This is not old technology, right? This isn't outdated or antiquated technology. This isn't something to say it doesn't meet this certain standard and the standard is P25. I've got Lawrence County, Rush County, Brown County, Harrison County, Davies County are all using VHF simulcast systems as their primary systems for communication.
So the frequencies that are in the context of this discussion for Scott County, those would be considered a public safety radio network?
Yeah, it's the same, your frequencies that you're using now.
I mean, that's the question.
They're not commercial radio frequencies. They're frequencies that all the public safety agencies are using now are licensed by the FCC under public safety frequencies for police and fire.
Does anyone else have anything to add to that with regard to future issues?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess just to clarify, so there's two things, right? There's the frequency, which is physics, right? I mean, it is what it is. And then there's the modulation. So there's VHF, which is I guess the correct term for low band, right? It's a certain range of frequencies. And inside that frequency band, there could be Joe's Tow Yard, Acme Manufacturing, and police and fire, right? They're all inside that band, right, and can contribute to noise with inside that band, because when you operate at a frequency, right, it's not just that frequency. There's there's a bit of a curve around it, right? 800, it's set aside for public safety, right? You still have to get a license to operate that, but the band itself, the FCC has said, this section of frequency only public safety entities can use. So there's the frequency part of it, right? Yeah, frequencies have obviously been around since the dawn of time. And then there's the modulation, or kind of the language that they speak, right? So the IPSC system, the language that it speaks and that frequency is talking on is called P25. So P25 is APCO standard. APCO is the standards body organization for public safety telecommunications. and dispatch. And it's an open source. There's many manufacturers that are part of this consortium, right, to provide interoperable communications. And it's designed for, made for, developed by public safety, right? I won't speak to the VHF low band, but it's a different type of language that those radios are speaking, right? That's a little bit more proprietary and developed by specific manufacturers.
So the VHF is not carved out for public safety, 800 is, and then the VHF system that they're proposing is not P25 standard, which means the radios that you purchase for their radios, which is the Handheld E.F. Johnson's, those radios will work on your system and they'll work on the 800 system. But anybody in this room who has any other manufacturer radios in your possession, those radios will not work on their system because their system's not P25, if that makes sense. So you can bring just about any radio to my system and it'll work. You have to have a E.F. Johnson or a Kenwood have to work on their system.
When you say your system, you mean
The safety system.
800?
The safety system.
Okay, just for clarification.
Yeah.
Well, that's not completely accurate either. Our product uses what's called FDMA. And the reality of it is ICOM, our standard is open. Anyone can join the FDMA. The manufacturers that have got on board with this, in addition to us, are ICOM and some others. Now, the bottom line is we're using it in a VHF simulcast mode, which is totally non-proprietary. That is the same as using a VHF analog radio.
So I could bring a Harris radio and buy a radio from Harris and it'll work on your system.
Yeah, so just to clarify,
Yes, it will.
it's using FDMA, but its existing.
It's not using FDMA.
You just-
It has capability
Well,
of
didn't
that.
you just say-
And that's what she claimed was proprietary.
No,
So
no,
what
no.
I'm saying is, it's not proprietary.
But you said it was using FDMA, right?
I'm saying NextEdge uses FDMA.
So it's NextEdge, yes.
If you put it in NextEdge, we're not operating in NextEdge.
Yeah, all right, so just to clarify, when you said FDMA is the multiplexing of the frequency, right? That's
It's
not the
what
language.
phase 1 P25 was.
Correct,
yes,
yeah, so it's
FDMA.
not FDMA, it's NextEdge, right? The
No, no, it's very much FDMA.
It's FDMA, yes, but lots of things are FDMA. That's the modulation scheme, right? The language that it's speaking is NextEdge, right? Just so there's not confusion.
No, the
as far as-
language is FDMA. You're confused.
No.
Read. Read it.
Respectfully, it's FDMA is frequency division multiplex accessing, right? And that's the digital
It's the
modulation.
same technology that phase 1 P25 was. Now, you've
Correct.
introduced phase 2, and it's TDMA. That is the biggest difference. You're talking about a TDMA system versus an FDMA system. What we presented to you is an analog, simulcast, VHF system. It works with any analog simulcast radio.
It's digital.
So,
Not true.
yeah,
So I would ask that question to say,
Try to wrap us up in about 30
Yeah.
seconds.
If it's not true, then how do your 300 radios work?
yeah, if it wasn't public safety
I mean, what are we-
grade, and
what are we
you get a-
hiding here?
And
We're
you
not
get a
hiding
license, you get a license from the FCC. They go through frequency coordinators for public safety. That's all they do is look at public safety frequency coordinators. And the reason why they do that is they use those frequencies and make sure that you have a certain amount of space between that frequency being reused.
Again, the frequency and the language they speak are two different things. So a radio, two radios can be on the same frequency, but they can't necessarily talk to each other because they're not speaking the same language. So if it's not P25 capable and it's not speaking the same language, they're not going to talk to each other. They're not going to be able to work. So it has nothing to do with frequency. It has to do with the language they talk to each other.
Okay, I'm gonna leave that one there. If we have limited time, if
So-
we need to bring
so
it back, we can.
For
So
Scott
we're-
County,
we're-
if you choose to go with their
Ma'am,
system,
we'll
just make
leave
sure.
that- Let's leave it right where it is. I think this has already been answered, and I'm gonna go through it, correct me if I'm wrong. The question is, what is the sustainability of the proposed low band system? How old is this low band system from a technology standpoint? You said it's been around for a long time, but this is new technology, right?
The simulcast part.
It's a further
Okay.
enhancement. for the
It's an
existing
enhancement on simulcasting, yes.
So is there an expected lifespan for this, I'm gonna call it new system, but you know what I'm talking about by the question?
I mean, I would still say 10 to 15 years is a system, if you upgrade this, that system should be working the next 10 or 15 years.
Okay, perfect. I mean, that answers exactly the question.
The 800 system has a contract to, and the funds to support it through 2036.
2036, you answered my next question. So, I'm gonna skip to another question, but it falls just in line with what you just said. When programmed, what will happen with the current low-band system, Scott County? It's just an upgrade, right?
Everybody that has a VHF, Kenwood digital radio now that's working on this system, their radios can be programmed to the new system. There's nothing, no changes with it. It is using a conventional simulcast frequency, the same as if we were going to simulcast their existing frequency if we wanted to.
So what will happen to the existing repeaters currently owned by Scott County?
I would recommend that they still be utilized because they still have use of life, and you make them operated either on fire grounds. We have certain people to where they can locate these repeater in certain zones or certain sections of where they can still use that single repeater for fire ground, TAC channels, and expanding your capabilities. So I would keep those frequencies in place that they have now. I would get licensed new frequencies for the simulcast, and then that way you can, like I said, use it for fire TAC, fire grounds that have expanded repeater coverage.
And they don't work together, it would be different frequencies.
It would be different frequencies,
Okay.
yes.
And this is gonna tag along with the lifespan piece, is why I moved down. It said when these repeaters, with these current repeaters possibly being replaced, which maybe they're repurposed, but for the question is replaced, after 12 years of service, what kind of lifespan would we expect for the new repeaters? That's 10 to 15 years?
15 years.
Okay. Is this an expense the county should be prepared for every 10 to 15 years moving forward, or what should be budgeted for annual maintenance and servicing?
So first of all, the repeaters come with a 3-year parts and labor warranty, right? So 100% maintenance covered for 3 years by Kenwood. So that's their warranty with it. So that just goes to show you where their warranty is for 3. And then, you know, the life expectancy, usually we have maintenance contracts or that if they want to propose for budgeting for maintenance with it.
Okay.
Or the repairs, but yeah, it's no different than maintaining your current system. Is a repeater, and I mean, it's something that we can repair in-house.
Okay, so I think that's spot on for the maintenance and servicing. The other part of that question, and I'm reading into what I think the intent was, so bear with me, but if the old system's 12 years and it's being replaced, this one's a lifespan of 10, does the county need to budget to replace this again in 10 or 15 years?
I mean, I would probably say that most things are, you know, whether it be automobiles or anything, that you have certain things.
But my question is this system, not anything outside of it.
I mean, I would probably say you probably should.
Okay.
But that would only be, that's not the whole bill, right? You know, again, out of that $530,000 proposal, almost 90,000 is shelters, right? I'm gonna tell you a shelter is probably gonna have a 30 to 40 year life expectancy the way that these shelters are built. The antennas, you know, it may be just a point of saying the electronics portion of that repeater might need to be upgraded.
Okay.
I mean, IPSC refreshes their repeaters every 8 years or so. So, I mean, it's a point to where, but they have license plate money. They have fundings from the state to be able to do that. And I would say if you're wanting to do that from a maintenance standpoint, I would budget for those types of things. There will be maintenance costs with it.
Now, I guess from that end of the table, I don't know who to direct it to, but do you see what other counties that are on the low band system, what they utilize, or is that kind of in line with what they do?
They generally pay, I don't know if maybe one of you are better equipped, but generally there's an annual maintenance, you would be wise to make sure that you budget for an annual maintenance if you build your own system. Again, that would be like not taking your car to get your oil changed. So you want to make sure, and then you also want to make sure your radios are being tuned and aligned, not just a template built, but a tuned and aligned, so that the radios and the system stay in alignment and they have their firmware and they can't be hacked. You need to make sure you budget for that, no matter what system you're on. The state system, of course, the safety system, the commission covers those costs.
Okay. So this is gonna, I mean, you guys are just hitting on the questions all around, it's just helping me.
Well, even if you went on the state system, you would still need to budget money because you have to replace your radios. I mean, even though you're not spending anything on infrastructure, look at your cost of equipment.
Doesn't matter what system you go on, you gotta
Exactly.
tune and align any radio that you have and plan to replace them after 7 to 10 years.
So I think for the purpose of this question, it was what I'm gonna call the system, whether that's repeaters or towers or whatever, not,
Okay.
would a radio be considered hardware, maybe, I mean, or
Yes.
so that's a fixed cost regardless, whether it's a radio A or radio B, correct?
Exactly right.
Okay. The next question, and it's comparing, I guess, low band to 800. Who is responsible for the upkeep and maintenance on the new this isn't radios, this is systems. Who is responsible for the upkeep and maintenance on the new low band and 800 radio systems?
The 800 system, for the system itself, the Integrated Public Safety Commission would take care of the upkeep, maintenance, and send a technician to the sites. We send technicians, that's what John Asher does.
Okay.
He oversees that, so we would take on that responsibility.
As well as upgrades, right?
Yes.
So the state, IPSC has an agreement with Motorola that every 2 years, the system gets upgraded to the latest, well, not the latest software release, because we generally stay just a hair behind, so we're not on the bleeding edge, but 2 weeks ago?
Yep.
We upgraded the system to our release 2021, so the software version that came out last year, and then replaced any hardware that had gone obsolete as part of that, right? At no additional cost to any users or the state or anything. It's built into a maintenance contract between Motorola and the state. So it gets the repeaters that are out there, they get upgraded and updated as they become obsolete. They get preventive maintenance every twice a year, I believe.
Twice a year by Motorola, and then John has a staff of 12 that go out and check our sites to make sure they're on the air, operational, and we cover the cost of that.
Okay. What would you explain the low band?
Okay,
And maybe we
sure.
already have, but
Sure.
whatever it needs
Sure,
to
it's
be.
under warranty for the first 3 years.
Okay.
And then after that, you would have either maintenance costs, whether it be time and material, or under contract, whichever you would like to do. Typically, what we charge is a 3% annual rate on the equipment. So if the equipment costs this, then usually our maintenance contracts are somewhere between, depending on what the system is, I would say 3 to 4% of what the cost is on an ongoing basis to maintain it. Now, the difference, if I was going to say the difference between the two systems, when you talk about cost, there would be a.
And we're talking about maintenance.
I'm talking about maintenance. There is a ongoing maintenance cost more with a local provided system because the state's covering their costs with maintaining their system versus the county would be covering their cost. Again, you're at a 3-4%. We have backup equipment. Actually, I think even on our proposal, there's a backup simulcast controller, backup repeater. There's a spare part of that. If anything ever fails, you have backups to be able to put that in and be immediately put back online. But the difference, if you're going to say on the equipment side, the maintenance side, I will contend you will have more maintenance than what you would be on the state system, just because you're covering the cost with it. But where I would say on the subscriber side, the radios are significantly more expensive that you would have to do with maintenance on that side of the fence. So if you're talking about just maintenance on the repeater infrastructure versus the maintenance on and cost of the radios that are on the system, I would say it's probably 4 to 1 on an 800 meg radio cost
to,
Let's be cautious with that, because I'm sure everybody has radio numbers comparing them, and I don't know what's true or not. So, I mean, if we can quantify a number, that's great, but let's try to be cautious with that.
I
But
refer to
the,
them.
but the P25 system, I should want to just make note that the radios that they're proposing you buy that are cost effective will also work on the 800 system. That we have hundreds of them already
And-
working on the
Yeah,
system.
there's a wide range of prices for P25 radios, right?
And there's a
They
large
can
group of
sell you-
manufacturers.
Yeah,
that
they can sell you a
sell.
P25 radio. We can sell a low-cost P25 radio. You can pay $1,000 or $11,000 for a P25 radio. It's the whole gambit, right? And I think that's the facts, right? I mean, we can
There's
say
even-
4X or whatever, yeah.
There's even this, which is a 99-cent device that works on the system. So, yeah, there's very, very cost-effective ways for you to communicate.
Just repeat that.
99 cents. This is a, Sciata makes it. It is a, it operates off of a cell chip, and it's connected to the 800 system. So I'm able to talk on the 800 system back to Indianapolis using this device.
the Chinese. Sayada, never heard of
Yeah,
it.
it's a brand new device. I believe that,
Possibly we can table that to the end. We're kind of heading almost selling almost.
I'm not selling it. It's just an option.
Okay.
But to answer that question, as far as the cost of the radios, there's a wide range and a wide variety of radios that you would have to choose from.
Okay. You good with that? I mean, anything to add? The sheriff's office currently has Kenwood dual band radios in their commissions. Are the dual band radios currently compatible with the new low band system?
Yes. 100%.
Okay. Is that only said? Does that cover it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's 100% compatible. Yeah.
Little.
And no cost except for programming it, and I think that's part of the package was reprogramming. So actually, the sheriff's department would have no expense whatsoever involved with their transition to that equipment.
Okay. Slightly different topic here, but just moving down the list. Does the federal and state government support grants and/or funding for the low band system?
It depends upon, I know Harrison County got a grant for some of theirs. I think 500,000 out of their $2.2 million project came from a local grant. So
Homeland Security has stated that they will support nothing but P25 system.
Okay.
For the SafeCom guideline, I believe it refers only to P25
So the
applications.
statewide interoperability coordinator who actually does grant reviews could answer that question.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I sit on the IDHS Senior Advisory Committee, which is the group that looks at those Homeland Security grant funds and distributes them. It's standard language in all federal grants that any communication projects and money spent must align with the statewide communications interoperability plan. And that means they have to be interoperable, cross boundaries, cross agency, cross geography, and P25 systems. So it must come through and align with that SCIP is what we call it. And there are certainly, it does not have to be the safety system, but it does have to align. It has to be interoperable with other systems, P25 standards.
Does this system meet that criteria?
no.
Well, no system would that was VHF because
Okay.
the statewide systems have all been chosen to be built in 800. So the minute you go outside of that band, you violated SafeCom. A VHF P25 radio does not talk to an 800 P25 radio. So you still have to deal with individual bands. So the P25 system,
Now you said, look, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said a VHF radio will not talk to.
P25 radio will not talk to an 800 P25 radio without being cross-patched, which happens in many, many, many systems. Because look at all the adjoining counties that are this band or that band or whatever. So the cross-patching is very
The
easy.
previous question was about the sheriff's radios
Yes.
being dual band, but those will.
That radio is capable. It does literally all these different protocols.
The 800, so the sheriff's department's radio has 2 RF decks. One control head, 2 RF decks. Has an 800 P25 RF deck, and it has the other one's a VHF next edge protocol RF deck. So even though that it's using one that's the RF deck that's on the state system on the 800 side, and this one is using this RF deck to talk on the low band or VHF.
Okay. Can the 800, this is a two-part question, but can the 800 system be utilized for paging, number one? And then Jeff, you may have to chime in on this one. Can our current 800 system be utilized for paging?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
So, yeah, the 800 system is your current 800 system, right? The 800 system you're operating on is the same system. There's no distinction between
Right.
an 800 system, the 800 system today and the 800 system tomorrow. It's the same system.
Okay.
And it does,
You're asking about.
so the
paging.
current, yeah, the current
Yeah,
800 system that you're using.
She said yes and
You
yes.
asked that question one more
Trip
time.
tones?
It makes it sound like there's 2 separate 800 systems. And there's
Well,
not.
and that was maybe in the way
Yeah.
that I asked it, because, again, I'm posing the way it's me.
Yeah.
But the 800 system can be used for paging.
That's correct.
Okay.
How do you do that?
And we'll say that for the end.
It's, several counties are doing it now.
Yeah, it's-
I guess I'm asking, how do you do that?
yeah, so it's not two-tone paging like what you would use today, right? But it is paging, so you can, it's called a caller. It's a P25 protocol for digital paging.
So if you have 4 different 5 or 6 different fire departments, EMS, you can page each of them
Yep.
individually?
Yeah, 100%. Indianapolis has many fire departments, and yeah, they can page individual fire departments. All of the donut counties around Indianapolis are doing that.
LaPorte, Kosciuszko,
Yeah.
Hancock, not Hendricks, Hancock. I don't know, Hendricks is as well.
Hendricks is as well.
Hendricks is as well,
So how-
Hendricks,
how-
Hancock.
Hang on.
Yes.
Hang on. Well, I'm gonna table that because I'd ask everybody to wait till the end. I don't wanna make one person think somebody
Yeah,
else's
sorry.
question is more important than somebody else. So we will bring that up at the end if there's time, but we committed to getting through these initial questions. So thank you, everyone. 911 dispatch can simultask 800 to the low band system. If 800 radios cannot use tones, can the low band system now simulcast tones over the 800 system? I think we just answered that.
So-
That would be no.
So the question is, if I patch my VHF system with tones to the 800, the tones that the VHF put out and the 800, they're different and they're not compatible. So the tones don't come out. Also, when I push to talk my 800 radio, I get a beep that says you can talk. It's a push to talk tone. That's not heard on the VHF side either. VHF doesn't understand that. So the tones between VHF and 800 don't match. The voice will come over, but no tone.
Okay.
Either direction.
Additional on that from anybody else? So let's think about Scott County, not state of Indiana, and maybe we know this, maybe we don't. What kind of coverage will we have in Scott County with each system?
I could send you some coverage.
You have a map right there, don't you?
And what is
We
that?
prepared there the PowerPoint.
And I've got some coverage.
To show you exact coverage.
Well, and that's,
with
like I
sites.
said, I committed to not being salesy, but
Sure.
can we quantify that? Is it 100%, 92%?
I would generally say, nothing's 100% because there's difference to where we're outside the building or inside the building. But I would say that it's above 90, it's probably above 95% portable talkback coverage, because the farthest away, actually it's 5 miles is the farthest away that you would be from any of the 3 towers. And all 3 of those towers vote. So they all receive your transmission, it goes back to the controller and rebroadcast it. So there could be different points of attack versus to be saying, hey, I've got a building blocking me from this tower, but I'm clear to this other tower. And that's one of the things of just like when people from this county went to go demo this, there's the benefit of getting multiple antennas around the tower receiving that portable, which is the most critical, is the portable talkback is the hardest to get back to it. Versus the state system is you're logged on to one tower and you're utilized and roam where you're at, but you're communicating to that one tower only when you're logged on to the system.
Okay.
But that one tower he's referring to is also connected to 189 other towers. So technically, Scott County can talk to Lake County or South Bend, Fort
We
Wayne.
were just talking about Scott County.
Yeah, within the confines of
Yeah,
our county-to-county communication.
Yeah, so the one tower your radio is affiliated with connects to all the other towers. So you have a very wide range of connections.
So you would say, well, I've got to kind of quantify this some way per the question. You would say and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I heard was conservatively 95% coverage.
Absolutely, yeah,
And
absolutely.
in the current state, can you guesstimate or,
I think it's a trick question personally, because it depends on what radio.
it was not
you're
asked as a trick
using. Yeah,
question.
I realize that. It depends on the radio you're using, how well that radio's been maintained, it doesn't have the proper antenna on it, and then in what conditions. If I'm in a car or in an ambulance driving and that radio's on my hip, I got a steel door and a bag of fat that's sitting between, that's gonna cause, so are you in building, are you out of building? So you can't answer that question.
But there is software.
Nobody can give you a quantified number like
Okay.
that.
There's software that's generated for the industry, which is what you utilize to do a propagation study. Everyone utilizes it. We have those
Yeah,
propagation
we'll
studies.
give
to
you
show
propagation maps on our system as well. However, I still can't tell you, I can tell you what the signal my system will give you, but I can't tell you what the coverage is going to be because it's dependent on the radio you use and how you use it.
I have been here to where, I don't know if there would be a point to where I could have 5 minutes of show some PowerPoint slides. I've got coverage maps showing for the 3 tower sites, showing, and I actually on my PowerPoint show where the tower sites are using IPSIX maps, not mine, and being able to say where those towers are located in what other counties, and how far they're away from Scottsburg that they are. You know, if you're talking on a portable, that's the tower that you're gonna log on to and how far away the distance. Again, I'm saying that for anywhere in Scott County, the farthest away that you would be is 5 miles. I can sit there and I can show on the map, depending upon which side of the county that you're on. If you're logged on to the Seymour Tower in Jackson County, it's 23 miles away from Scottsburg. If you're located on the Madison Tower, it's 23 miles away, and that's the tower that you got to take your portable to talk all the way back to. And so yeah, I would say I have no problem with saying that ours would be able to offer superior coverage and 95% because you're so close to your tower.
Okay, I would like to come back with that if we have time at the end. But for now, I'm just going to keep moving because I think we've covered it at some level. With the proposed low-band repeaters, can all agencies utilize the same channels and radios hit the closest repeater automatically versus the current, we have an east repeater and a west repeater and you choose your channel?
So there's no roaming. So these are all, that's why I wish I could show my PowerPoint showing that these are all using the same frequency at all 3 of those sites.
So it is not what we have today?
It's that times 3, but it's using one frequency and it's simulcasted out through the system. So you're not like roaming or scanning channels like to say, hey, I'm going to scan to the west, or I'm going to scan to the east, and I'm going to hit that repeater. These are 3 repeaters that come up at the same time. And when you talk out, there's 3 repeaters that they receive at the same time.
So the system does that, to answer the question, or make sure I'm understanding, the system chooses out automatically. You don't drive to a certain point and switch
votes
channels?
it, yeah.
Okay.
It will vote. The system all comes back to the simulcast controller and it votes the best audio received out of all 3 of those sites. So you're always getting the repeated audio, the best signal coming out of any of those three antennas.
Okay.
The layman's way, the best way I understood that is they're proposing 3 towers to give you better coverage, but it'll act like one tower,
Okay.
correct?
No, not at all.
Isn't that what a simulcast system does?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think she was trying to disparage it anyway.
No,
I mean,
no, no,
it's-
it gives you
yeah.
superior coverage, but to your radio, it acts like one site, but it's 3 towers to give you better coverage.
No, it acts like 3 towers, because you could be blocked from this tower. I could have a building in front of me, and all of a sudden, when I'm talking on a radio, the
I think she's
receiver
trying
may
to help
not
you,
get
actually.
it. But you know, so it's going to use all 3 of those towers at the same time to figure out which is the closest, and maybe even the best signal. You may get a better signal to that one, not because it's the closest side, it's because there's no obstructions in your way, right? So, and it votes every time that it does it. It comes back to microwave link to a voter and rebroadcast out the best receive audio from either one of those antennas.
Okay. You named, the question is, what other local public safety departments use the low band system or other emergency responders? You named several already that use it. During an emergency, how would this system impact our community in regards to resources and mutual aid?
Can you quantify that?
Like, I think what the question is asking is people on same system and different systems when we go outside the county for mutual aid.
So you have this today, Scott County 911, and again, I've got on my PowerPoint slide, from dispatch has the ability to do interoperability, patch an 800 radio to a VHF radio today in your dispatch center. They can hit it, it says patch, and one button says patch, it turns purple, and then they select which channel, would it be 800 or VHF, what they want, and all of a sudden that console, your dispatch console, has created a cross-patch or a link between the two. So if you had anybody that was coming in to do mutual aid for, say, 800, and they got 800 radios, and that's what they use, and they're over here, and you've got one thing to talk to your VHF, dispatch could assign them over to one of the local MA talk groups. They've got a wild card radio, they could say, well, go to MA2, and they patch it, and now those people's portable on MA2 would talk directly out to the fire.
So that's what we have
We have
today, or
yeah.
what we will have
No, you have it right now.
with the proposed system?
You have it right now.
Yes, Jeff, you're,
After the Bales fire, I have contacted Clark County. They are working with Chief Furnish and the chief out at New Washington, just right now for those two, to get permission for me to add their frequency into my console. So if we ever have another situation like that, and when road comes up here, I can patch their fire people to our fire people automatically. There will be no transfer of, hey, you've got a spare radio we can use while we're up here.
In dispatch, we have what's called wild card radio. So instead of a fixed radio like sheriff, fire, EMS, we actually have wild card radios that are multi-channel. And so those channels are programmed into it, and they can select other surrounding agencies and that, so they can operate on their frequency.
okay, thank you. If all agencies are on the same system, will some agencies' departments be encrypted, and how will this impact communications between all emergency responders?
Are you talking about the system we're proposing?
Yes.
We can do encryption. I would probably recommend encryption with it. It comes with DES 256 bit encryption, and so it's included, and your radios have that capability to do encryption if you want them to.
Okay.
The microwave links, just at the point of what I would say of, just because we talk about what the security of a system, right? How secure is your system? Say when you talk about cybersecurity, to where the system we're proposing has 2 6 gigahertz licensed point-to-point microwave links. We've done studies. We have 99.99% reliability. Actually, on the links, their actual downtime is 1 second per year, and so it's point-to-point. So, and I would say compare that, and it runs AES, 256-bit encryption, which is the most secure encryption on the market right now. And we have that, the state system can run AES and DES encryption as well. But we've encrypted ours over our microwave point, so it's secure. So, but I will say that the other difference is the state system uses T1 lines, which are phone lines through AT&T. And sometimes those do become damaged or can get dug, and it happened recently down in Harrison County that all of a sudden it causes some networking problems. Versus ours, it's point to point, there's no other interface with it, there's nobody that's going to be taking that microwave link or causing interruptions with it.
Okay.
So heavy winds, we also run a microwave system, so heavy winds getting your dish out of alignment is something that you have to be concerned with. Microwave. Heavy fog will affect your microwave link.
Yeah, and we have
microwave links are extremely reliable.
And to safeguard that, what we do is they have, like, I don't know, you see like old satellite dishes where they got a radome in the front. We actually put a cover, it's a snow cover on the front, so snow doesn't get impacted in there where the water and the moisture. So that's protected with it. And I have 2 tower climbers on staff that's from our company. So if we ever had to do emergency service, if we ever had that, I can send them up on the tower without having to contract tower crews and that. We actually have certified tower climbers for our company.
High winds and I think trees growing and people building buildings in the middle of your path, church steeples,
Yeah.
water towers. When they put those up, you have no control over those in the middle of your path. So those are the only thing that pretty reliable.
Perfect.
With the microwave, is that 6 gigahertz band?
Yes.
Emission?
6 gig licensed with AES 256-bit encryption.
Yeah, I'm gonna shift gears just a little bit, and we're considering you guys as the experts, and then the audience here in just a minute, because we've made good time and stayed on task. I'd like each of you, and I'm gonna put on time for 2 minutes, to tell the group what you think is pertinent. Maybe the question got asked, maybe it didn't get asked. This is not a sales pitch, it's not your time to pitch your product, but what have we not asked that the group needs to know? And then from the audience, after that, whatever time remains, I'll be glad to take questions. I'm gonna take 1 question per person, so if you have 5 questions, pick your most important one. That way not one person has the whole conversation. And we'll go down the list until Rachel cuts us off. If that's good with everybody, that's the way we're gonna proceed. So if you don't care to kick us off.
Sure, not at all. I think the only thing I want to point out, with the concern, because I've had some calls from surrounding counties, would be on VHF. The ability for the other fire agencies specifically, when they be able to communicate with the next ed system here when they were doing mutual aid out there to see with, firefighter to firefighter type of things. But that's the only thing I think that I have heard from outside this community about concerns with the next ed system that you all would be looking at. But that's not to indicate I'm trying to, I would love you guys to buy our products and those sort of things. I'm not trying to beat up a particular product. I just want to point out the fact that that is a concern around the area of how they're going to be able to work with each other when this becomes confined to that. That's my thought.
Okay.
Yeah, so 2 things really quick, I guess. When we talk about the systems, right? So, the IPSC system, it's here today, it's operational today. What the proposed thing would be to add some coverage, to bring some coverage, right? There's a couple different ways you can do that. You can add sites. The state's invested in technology, like Kelly has here, with interoperability with broadband devices. So you can, bring a broadband device to augment and supplement some coverage, both, through LTE out and about, and through Wi-Fi when you're inside of a building for, a school officer or, somebody that's in a building most days. So there's lots of different ways to kind of skin that cat, right? And then as well as, like I said, there's a wide variety of devices that you could use on the system as well. So from ongoing costs, maintenance, upgrades, those sorts of things, the infrastructure, that's going to get taken care of. There's going to be Motorola badge employees that come and fix things when they break and upgrade them as they need upgraded. But from a devices standpoint, you can buy a Motorola device, you can buy a Harris device, Tate, EF Johnson, B&K, lots and lots of devices that you could put on that sort of a system.
Yeah, I don't think I could really add much to what we've all discussed. I think all the bases have been covered. I think there's questions the audience has about paging specifically. But again, I don't think there's anything I can add.
Okay.
I just want to give you a couple quick numbers because I think there's an impression that the 800 system doesn't work in Scott County. So I just want to give you a few numbers. Scott County push-to-talks on our system for your talk groups, just from year to date, is 82,284. So that's 82,284 conversations have already occurred on the 800 system here in the county. Last year, it was 273,422 conversations occurred on the 800 system here in Scott County. From your surrounding counties, the push to talks for them to talk to each other is 1.3 million conversations occurred around Scott County on the 800 system. And then currently in Scott County, you have 298 radios that work and affiliate with our radio system, and that's across 16 different agencies. So just to demonstrate, it does work. It's here, it's working. Coverage gaps, yes, we know there's coverage gaps, but that's why we're proposing a new site at Hardy Lake. I always want to say Lake Hardy, but I know it's Hardy Lake.
Perfect.
Well, the thing that strikes me about all this is that we're not here to tell you our system's better than their system. We're not here to say that you have to go our way. It's the only way. It's very simple. 10 years ago, when Mike Dyer came in here, you were using analog and you were using simplex channels. Now, 10 years ago, this system was 11 years into its existence. So when we came in, given the budget that you had, we tried to propose a way to take your communications forward. Obviously, the funding was not there to do the state system at that time. I don't know if it's there now. Don't even want to speak to that. What we're trying to do with this system was take you to the next level and complete what we started 10 years ago in giving you a working communication system that is quantum leap above what you had. It may not be the very best that's out there, but that may not be the very best budgeted for you all. This is not Indianapolis where you have unlimited budgets. This is not Louisville. This is a county that has to sustain itself. This is a county that's got to come up with the money year in and year out. And it's a county that has to have a product that they can afford to own long term. When you start looking at flat cost repairs on radios, the bottom line is, I won't even attempt to tell you what they are. They're published. Motorola has a list. We don't do flat rate pricing. We let our dealers fix it, and we have depots. And I can tell you that sincerely, any Next Edge radio, the average cost is not going to be anywhere near a P25 product. That's why the P25 product costs typically between $3,000 and $6,000 for a handheld. It's just basic economics. We want to build the system that does the best for you. Now, does this have to be your primary or your backup? Okay. If we can get you there quicker, that's all this was about.
What I would say with it is, and I appreciate IPSC being here. We're actually a partner with IPSC. We appreciate what they do. I think we've even had situations where, John, we've even talked about how can we help each other with systems that we put in that can help IPSC. We, as our company, have sold thousands of radios on the state system. The only thing that makes this different is that there is not, it's about logistics and towers, right? There's just no tower sites within this county, and it's a further range. And will they bring on towers? I hope so. I hope that you do, and I hope that, but I know that it costs a lot of money to do that. But to be able to do that, that's where to say, even IPSC talks about on their website, having primary and secondary systems. And I don't think that we're even trying to say, hey, let's pick one or the other, because it would be a mistake to be able to pick one or the other. You need both. I can tell you that there's many times with dealing with dispatch centers, and Jeff could probably attest to this, to where you get something on IDAX to say, hey, you know, we're having maintenance. We're doing maintenance on the system, and you need to go back to your secondary system. right? You may involve some intermittent. There could be storms, storm damage, T1 lines will be broken in. It could be our microwave system put out. But whatever it be to where you want to work into where you have a primary and secondary backup systems that can complement. If one goes out, you have that backup. You have some of the interoperability that's already in place with dispatch to be able to connect an 800 P25 radio to Kenwood Next Edge VHF. You have that in place now, and it would be no different with the new system. The new system that we're doing is just filling in those spots to where, again, you're going to be 5 miles away from a portable talking to any tower to be able to talk back. And that's vital when you start talking about going inside structures.
Well, we're time. Thank you. So I want to express thanks to you guys for being here to take the questions. I think we're all in the room for the same reason. We want what's best for Scott County. I know in some circles this has been a very spirited topic. Again, that as we open it up for questions, keep your question concise, same as I asked them to do. I don't think it's any one person's opportunity to sell their opinion. Let's just ask the questions. Let's get it on. Yes, Jeff.
I just want to clarify a couple of things. The patch, it does work. I patched in, I was sitting in my office, no windows, in that building over there, and I passed in and talked to Jim Ritchie across town at Station 1. Then I passed in and talked to Sean Hurd on the interstate. That was on low band, Jim Ritchie. I passed and talked to Sean Hurd on the interstate. I could see him. We was probably, what, quarter of a mile away from each other. And I was on 800, he was on low band. She's right, you don't get that alert tone when you key up if you're on the low band. You just have to give it a 5-second count, like you normally would anyway. As far as the maintenance agreement goes, I pay for that. It's not, it's budgeted per se, but that money comes from the state 911 board. So when we get, what else do we hear? How much do we get for radio on the yearly?
On a yearly, you're talking 65.
And that's how we pay all that money for like my 911 phone system. It comes from the state 911 board, from the cell phone, telephone line fees. So I wouldn't foresee a big, me going to council and saying I need this much money for maintenance, because it's already covered. We already have maintenance agreement with them, so.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, I'll ask the first, well, one other thing, I'll ask the first question because it kind of came up and it could be pertinent. And that way somebody else doesn't have to use that question, but walk us through the pagers. Like, what does that 800 pager look like?
So from a device standpoint, or how it works technically on the system, I guess, or both?
Both.
So from a device standpoint, Motorola doesn't manufacture an 800 megahertz pager. There are 800 megahertz pagers that are on the system. Kelly or John could probably speak to that a little bit better than I, but I guess how it works, right? So VHF, you send out 2 tones, right? There's a radio that's listening for those specific frequencies. When it hears those, it's going to open up. What P25 paging is each radio on the system has an ID, right? It's kind of their social security number that, anytime you key up a radio, that's what the system looks at to see if you're allowed on the system, if you're allowed on the talk group on the site, all that good stuff, right? It's your ticket to dance. So what a call alert is, a call alert to P25 page, it is a direct alert to a specific radio ID. So from the dispatch console, you would select the resource, I would assume on one of your wildcard channels. You would say, hey, I want to alert Scottsburg Station 2. That radio at Scottsburg Station 2 would get the alert, as well as if you wanted to put the pagers in there or different radios, or, what have you, right? So no, it's not two-tone paging, just because that doesn't work in a digital world, in a P25 digital trunking world, but it's analogous functionality to what that paging would do.
So the pages to a device or a group of devices
It
rather
pages
than
a specific device
agency.
rather than a device listening for that specific tone that's coming out and then opening up.
Okay, perfect. And I'm sure there's a lot of questions. I have no idea how to start this, so
Can I piggyback on that?
is it a question or a comment?
It's a question.
Okay,
Is that okay?
yeah.
So there are no trip tones on 800. Because I'm dealing with a service that sleeps, we work 24-hour shifts. Instead of having an analog beep tone, I think some of the disassociation between fire and EMS and this tone is verbiage. Right now, we have trip tones that once it recognizes that tone, you have a secondary alert, which is what most of us wake up to in the middle of the night. Does 800 have that trip tone ability, or is it just a solid tone and then there's talk? Because right now on this, dispatch pages me out, you have your initial two-tone frequency. After the dispatch is done, you have that dee-doo-dee-doo-dee, whatever it is. You have some type of alert. Can you have that secondary alert after dispatch that continues after the dispatch as an alert? Or are you dealing with a single tone for the initial dispatch and nothing else?
Yeah, I mean, I'm assuming from the telex console, you could add something to the end of that, at the end of that alert or at the end of that call that would have a tone or something like that that would come out. If what you're
Then
looking
why
at,
does Clark County still use analog for dispatching?
I'm not familiar with the way Clark County functions.
Because they still use analog for dispatching and then do communication on 800.
So I know some counties still will use VHF, again, from a cost perspective, for volunteer fire departments and those sorts of things.
They're using it for paging only.
Gotcha. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar. I kind of stopped just before before Clark County.
That's my biggest.
Yeah,
I
but
have
I
a
mean,
note to call Clark County.
Huh?
I have a note to call Clark County.
I
let them
mean,
know
that's
that
my
they can use
question, is
paging.
if we can't get alerts that we need. I mean, police is different because you guys are awake and there, and I understand that you're there to listen, but at 3 o'clock in the morning, my people aren't sitting there after 20 hours.
Yeah.
There needs to be some type of alert.
yeah,
That's more than a single tone, 2-second blip.
yeah, and that is 100% possible. Yeah.
And I believe that there's like 10 to 20 different tones that the dispatch can use on, if they choose to use it. There are some built in.
We can get you in touch with, Bartholomew County would probably be a good analog of, not analog, it's similar to how you guys would probably operate.
Thank you.
And the new system would be able to do the
Identical.
two-tone, identical to it, and it would actually increase their coverage because it would go out all 3.
Because right now, I don't believe I have a repeater.
Yeah. So with that, yes, we can do two-tone paging over simulcast digital.
I think maybe Rachel's telling me we got time for just a couple of questions, so, all right.
I got a question to you, Jared. Sometime back, you did a survey for Scott County for 800 system for Jeff Fortner for 911. In that quote, I guess you put in some mapping that you had for coverage for 800, you came up with a solution that we needed 2 towers to get optimal communication within the county. So we're not talking about 1 tower, we're talking about 2 towers to be having equal or better service than what we have right now. Yeah, we can put a tower up on the north end of the county, but we're only going to service a certain area. We're still going to have dead spots in Lexington and other places within the county. So I guess my question is, if we buy 1 tower at the price or install 1 tower, we're still going to have substantial, or substandard communication still.
Yeah, so I mean, if you put a tower around Hardy Lake, there still will be gaps in the Lexington area. It's similar to how they are today, right? The tower in Hardy Lake won't help any of the coverage issues around Lexington.
That's the question I wanted.
But as I was saying, there are other ways to supplement that coverage, right? So there is a cellular site that's in Lexington. We have radios that can use that cellular system as a backup to the LMR, to the 800 P25 system. There's one in the county now that's acting as a demonstration unit. That I'm sure we can get some feedback on that. But yeah, from an RF perspective, the more the merrier, right? The more sites you have, obviously the better the coverage is going to be. Yeah.
I'll get you guys some coverage maps.
Okay. I know you had some.
Actually, we have,
Okay.
I have them from his, he gave service maps.
Anybody else have a important question?
Raymond Jones, Scott County Council. I've not heard much about dispatch. And my question is, I guess it's all about dispatch, but maybe it's 3 points. Number one, are we gonna have to do any upgrade to our dispatch system if we don't have anything to do with any of you guys? Number two, are we gonna have to do dispatch upgrade with you guys and with you guys?
I think what I heard was if we do nothing, do we have to do upgrades? And then if we,
And maybe Jeff knows, I haven't talked to him, I guess
I can answer that question. So, right now, the current equipment that is already in dispatch will work off this system. You would not have to replace it. Some of the things that are equipment that,
You say you wouldn't have to, should we?
not necessarily.
Okay, go ahead.
So some of the equipment that in dispatch that I would recommend replacement has to deal with some of their PC units. So that they have, only because they're running off of Windows 7, which is no longer supported. So from a standpoint, just because of the age of dispatch, right, with the computers and the technology, that software, that's why I would probably recommend the PCs in dispatch, but not any of the radios. They have full capability to work off this system. Now, from that standpoint, whether you went all 800 in that, I mean, we could,
I don't have to upgrade to work with you.
no,
Okay.
no.
No.
What?
Is there a state requirement? Jeff, let me apologize publicly to Jeff. I wanted to talk to him last week and I couldn't get to it. Hit me over the head. Jeff, is there a periodic, I'm hearing rumbles that we're gonna have to dispatch, upgrade dispatch within 3 years regardless. Is there anything to that?
We have to upgrade our 800 radios in dispatch before that TDMI comes out.
Is that regardless?
For the 800 side, it's gonna have to be replaced.
And that's regardless.
So,
Regardless of what we do.
Okay.
so if we move, and again, it's if, we're trying to prepare to move to allow TDMA, because all TDMA is gonna do is allow us to use a frequency twice, so it gives us more capacity. But when the state moves the system to TDMA, it's gonna be in a mixed mode, so if you're non-TDMA, your radios still work. We're not gonna force radios off the system because they're not TDMA. It'll be running in a mixed mode. So you're not gonna be forced in 3 years to upgrade those radios.
Jeff, you had a question?
I was just gonna ask if we, and I know what the answer is for the simulcast system, or a roundabout answer. I don't know about the 800 system. Whichever one we went with, I'd like for them to answer the time frame of the equipment, the installation, and being live on it.
So you want to go first?
Would that be directed with the simulcast system?
Both of them.
Okay,
The
so,
simulcast and the-
okay, so on the simulcast system, we can have this system installed and up and running probably in less than, I would say 5 months from now.
Is that a question for you on the 800s, or who would be best equipped?
The 800 exists already, so it's just a matter of radios, purchases. I mean, the system exists.
Yeah, so if you're looking to add coverage, so at one site, so IPSC has the repeaters
The equipment's already here.
at one site, so it's the repeaters, not all the equipment, but it's a vast majority of the equipment. So that equipment's already there. You know, the rest of the equipment, it would ship in the next couple months, and then would get implemented directly from that. There'd be licensing, right, with the FCC, because it would be new frequencies. I'm not sure getting licenses quite in 5 months. That's a couple month process to get those licensed. But yeah, I mean, by the end of the year, there could be a site up and running with the equipment that's already around.
And is it possible to get, I mean, I think this part, can we get that equipment, like the radios, in that time frame?
The portable radios?
Is that what your question was?
Basically, what I'm asking is, I know where the simulcast system is intended to go on water tanks. We would either have to purchase a tower, put or use an existing structure like the cell phone tower out here that they just put up, which they don't even have their telephone equipment on yet. Okay, and from what I was understanding, that could be another 6 months to a year before they get that completely done. So that's why I'm asking a time frame. If they're going to use the existing cell tower, what's that time frame look like to get the equipment up and running?
Yeah, so if you're, so a site hasn't been, identified and selected and locked down, right? The site acquisition, I mean, we can build a new tower is gonna be very, very expensive, right? So we've been working with members of the county to identify potential towers, right? And, if it's a third-party tower that needs a lease and agreement and stuff like that, that's obviously incumbent on what their timeline looks like.
Can you estimate a reasonable time frame?
I mean, if we have a tower that's ready to go, it would be a much shorter time frame, right? It would be by the end of the year. If it's a site that needs to be constructed and those sorts of things with NIPA and SHPA regulations, those sorts of things, to build a tower, you're looking at a 1.5 to 2 year type of timeline.
So 8 to 24 months. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
8 months at a minimum, 24.
If you have to build a tower. And do all
For the
that.
additional side, not for just the radios, yeah.
Did that get you, Jeff, question? I'll take one over there, just from that side. Yes, sir.
Toby Deaton, I want to be clear on something. I'm speaking as the Indiana Fraternal Order of Police Vice President, not for the Sheriff's Office. I have a question for you, Mr. Dye. If we go to this system, what surrounding agencies can we talk to as law enforcement?
On
The
that,
low-band system.
you can talk to Washington County, because they're on using VHF Next Edge. I mean, if you're talking about directly utilizing their system, is that what you're trying to say, or
Currently,
would you patch?
Currently, we're on the 800 system.
Okay.
If I need to talk to a Clark County deputy, or a Jackson County deputy, or a Jefferson County deputy, or even Washington County deputy, I can talk to them direct from my car to them. I'm asking on this, if we go to this low-band system, what do we have to do, and who can we communicate with on this low-band system?
Okay.
You've illustrated that we can talk a long distance. My point is, who are we going to speak to? Who's on the other end?
You mean outside of the county?
Correct.
So for mutual aids and that.
Correct.
So I would probably say that they have, and not confirming, but I know for sure, Washington, because I maintain Washington County, that they have Kenwood Next Edge that you could actually put in those frequencies in your radios and talk right on Washington's County Sheriff's Department system or the fire department. I do know that adjacent county has that. They also have the opportunity to say other counties, which I don't know, but I could verify or find out if they have radios in dispatch that have that capability, because a lot of them do, because there are other agencies out there that are still using VHF out there, that they may have that already in their consoles and can do exactly what we were talking to, Jeff said about testing the patch, to where it could take the low band to 800 and vice versa, to where they can initiate that patch in dispatch, connecting the two radios. On the Sheriff's Department has dual bands on that with this county, so they have the 800 mobile and the VHF modem both in there. So then they wouldn't have to patch anything if they're talking to Clark County. They could go right on to any of the IPSC channels for mutual aid. Or if you had their direct talk group in there, you could program it in the vehicle and go right on.
May I answer that question from I'm statewide interoperability coordinator. My job is not specifically about the shared statewide system. My job is to coordinate that interoperability between other agencies. There's something called the Interoperability Continuum, and on one end you have, you can talk by patching things together or swapping radios. That is interoperability. You can talk. But then on the other end, which is the highest level, it is a shared system. And that's because different jurisdictions, disciplines, geographical areas can talk. And that shared system is the top level of interoperability, that continuum. There are other lanes, with grants and governance, and Kelly addressed a couple of those earlier. But just in terms of being able to talk to each other, and the word interoperability is being thrown around a lot, that continuum, the shared system, is the level that you're, the desired level.
But to answer that, you were bringing up like using a cell tower site that has on it. You're talking about using Wi-Fi. There's still all sorts of different interoperability.
100%, yes,
capabilities.
100%, absolutely.
Yeah.
Not everybody can, for various reasons, whether it's financial or terrain or
Right.
whatever reason. We're always going to have different systems, and we're always going to have to find a way to interoperate. So that's really is what I do, and I know the people I work with. No matter what happens in this room or in this county, we're committed to making sure that we can talk during emergencies. That's the bottom line.
So a neutral question, I think that might help your answer the interoperability question, is if the local agencies around have a P25 system, local law enforcement can talk to each other without a patch by changing channels and or going to a mutual aid talk group. The Kenwood E.F. Johnson radios can work on our system. So if the local law enforcement have in their Kenwood, there's 14 talk groups that are available for mutual aid that are built into our system. So if they dual program those radios with the state system and you go to one of those talk groups, you'll be able to talk. Take a little bit of coordination, but you'll be able to talk. But putting your talk groups into their system may not. You would have to do a patch.
Yeah.
With the
Yeah, the
dispatchers
regional,
would have to do that.
they would probably more or less want to go to a regional mutual aids where they would call in, because each dispatch center monitors their own regional mutual aid. Like for Scott County, it's O, and it's the same way with Clark County. So Scott County monitors OMA1, and so does Clark County. So vice versa, if they come back in and out, that's how you're going to call into their dispatch to be able to communicate with them on the regional talk groups.
So that does bring a good point that I'd like for everybody in this room to, I hope, walk away with, is, so what he's just referring to is if they build out their system, the mutual aid does rely on the 800 system to be able to talk. But if Scott County decides we want to build our own system and we want this other system, the 800 system is still here. The safety system, we're not going to go, oh, you chose them, so you're tough out of luck, we're not helping you. That's not going to happen. We're still here to serve you. The 800 system is still here to serve you. The question you want to ask yourself is, how much coordination is reasonable to give you that interoperability that you need and deserve while you're boots on the ground fighting that fire? Do you want to go, I got to change my radio, or I need dispatch to throw that patch up? It's how much coordination and how much money do you want to spend?
If I said one part, so see if anybody else has one. Nobody else raise your hand, you get back.
So, and maybe this is a Scott question, maybe not. Jackson and Clark counties both in order to be on the digital, to be on the 800 system, are carrying VHF radios as well for paging. I hate to grind on paging, but why would those two counties, so all the firefighters in those two very large counties are carrying 2 radios every single day? And Scott, could you speak to how that works for them?
Well, I think in general, with the exception of Scott County, I don't believe there's a lot of folks in Scott County that carry pagers. I think you're relying on your radio and the record capability of the radio and the radio's capability to receive the page. In a lot of the other counties, they had a lot of investment in pagers. So they elected to keep their VHF traditional way of paging everything in place so that they saved funds. To implement a P25 paging solution, I don't know if all the bugs actually have been worked out of it. I'm not technical in that aspect of it, but to speak to Jared's point earlier, there are ways around doing 800 P25 paging. But to provide it to you the way you're accustomed to it today is, there probably needs to be some more questions answered specifically.
Jerry, has your hand up.
One thing I was going to ask is this. Here's the issue is this. Everybody in here needs to decide what they need. We have to decide what we want and what we can use. Lexington has to decide what they want. They can use Scottsburg has to decide. That's the issue. And the reason why I say that is this, because really we're comparing apples to oranges, because on a police side, we don't have time to patch. Because if you're in the middle of a fight rolling on the ground, or there's an emergency going on, we don't have time for patching and doing all that kind of stuff. We have to be able to rely to pick up the radio and talk direct, which we do on a daily basis. I will say this, we talk to our outside agencies probably more every day than we talk to our own agencies, because we are transporting prisoners, we're dealing with them every day on the county lines, just things that happen. And what I'm trying to say with that is this, and I can't speak for a fireman, that's why I'm gonna let those guys do that, because I don't know. But what we're saying is this, when we talk to our fire departments, it's usually at a static situation, where they're already at the scene, we're already at the scene, hey, can you block the traffic, can you block the traffic? It's not at a situation of, I'm getting my, you know what, kicked, I'm ready to die, you don't get me help. It's a different situation, and that's why it's hard to compare these radios, because the police agencies are looking at this from a police agency standpoint, and the fire folks are looking at it from a fire department standpoint. And there's absolutely 2 different lenses in the EMS system. That's like with EMS, that's like you can use the local system here, correct me if I'm wrong, but when you go to Louisville and Indianapolis, you have to get on the 800. It's like we almost have to have both systems, because I understand that the affordability could be a problem for our local fire agencies. I get that. That's why I don't want nothing to do with it. That's their decision. They have to decide that, because they're the only ones. But what I'm trying to say is there's 2 different systems here that we're talking about. There's 2 different lenses, 3 different lenses actually, that we're talking about. And to be able to say that this system here is perfect for everybody is impossible, and it's not going to happen, because everybody's situation is different. The only thing I can speak for is the sheriff's office. I can't even speak for Austin. I'll let him speak for him or Scottsburg. The sheriff's office, we have to have an 800 radio system, because we function every day talking to Clark County, Jefferson County, Jennings County. We're on an ERT team with Jennings County, which is 800. We have to be able to talk to those folks direct. You know what I'm saying? We can't say patch me in with this when I'm getting ready to kick a door. You know what I'm saying? We just did a search warrant in Jefferson County. Now, when we're doing those things, it's live, it's action, it's real time. And the fire departments, again, they have to speak for their own selves, but if they need the mutual aid, like from Charlestown and everything, that patch, they've got time to make that patch usually, because they're usually coming in from a different area, so they can patch and they can do those things. So that's the main issue and the main problem we have here is that everybody's looking at these, but their own lenses. And each department needs to decide what they want and what they can afford. That's what I'm trying to get at here, because we can sit and we've argued this for months. But the bottom line on this is this.
Do you have a question, Jerry?
That's the question.
We're time sensitive here.
That's it. That's the question, is everybody look at this for, really a statement that everybody needs to look at this from their own perspective.
That goes back to Sally's point of the interoperability continuum depending on what you do, is it clunky or is it seamless? That's what you have to decide. Is clunky okay and affordable, because that's what I can get, or do I want something seamless, so then,
But that's only on the interoperability standpoint. If you're on the local standpoint, doesn't care if you're clunky, can you talk on it? Can you get out? Can you talk from a portable and reach somebody who can help you? So I think there's 2 points to that, so
We can on the 800, we don't have no issue with that, just in certain locations, so we use it every day.
but from a fireman standpoint, mutual aid is not always inside my county.
James, you had a question?
One last thing, it's been brought up numerous times in meetings and so on, I know we're running real close. The tower that keeps being spoke of near Hardy Lake. Obviously, the state is willing to bring that repeater in. I know there's some cost to the county and so on. Scott County says, no, we're gonna go with this other system. Is it correct that that tower will not come to Scott County at that point?
Correct,
It will be taken to another county?
yes.
Okay, so moving forward, 15 years, 10 years, is the state done with their build out of their infrastructure? Will those opportunities still be available? Will there be a repeater sitting around that we might be able to get? Or is this, okay, now we're out $250,000 inflation, more than that, 10 years from now, because we need coverage for 800 radios?
Yeah, so I think on the 800 side, the decision you have to make is, do you want to invest in that tower and have it put at Hardy Lake? We already have a pretty big investment in that equipment. We're offering it up to put it here, but you would have to invest in it as well. If you say, no, we don't want to invest in that site, then another county does want to invest in it. We actually have 2 counties that are saying, please let me have it, pick me. So we'll probably allow them to invest in it. 10 years down the road, you say, you know what, we really should need to have that other tower here, and we want to use that 800 system. Then your investment would be greater because we won't provide that equipment. After this single site, we're not paying for any more site equipment. If a county wants to add the site, they're free to do it, but they have to pay for all of it. We won't pay for any more of it.
But correct me if I'm wrong, the entire concept here is that you would need 2 tower sites. So if you put in this first one, you're only halfway there.
I'm not.
That's, I mean, the discussion has been that it's gonna take 2 to cover
The
Scott
question was
County.
whether we're getting an 800 tower site. Yeah, it wasn't how many we need, it was.
What I'm saying is if you accept this one now, then you still don't have full coverage, so you need
Well, I
to be looking
understand that.
at it
That wasn't my
from 2
question.
sites, not one.
I have a question.
I believe.
I may have heard that wrong, but are you saying if they choose to go the VHF simulcast, that the state wouldn't put in a site there? Or are you saying if they
No.
don't want,
No,
if they
if-
don't help cover some of the costs?
The county, if the county says, I don't want to invest in the Hardy Lake site,
Okay.
then we won't put it in there.
Okay.
But the county has to decide, do you want to invest in that or not? Has no bearing on it, whether they go with your system or not.
I just felt that.
We
needed to
don't
be
have,
spoke on, because
Yeah.
that tower's come up numerous times.
Yeah.
And if, we don't invest in that tower, what does that look like moving forward? And I think that was the question. It wasn't about how much more towers we need, how many more towers we need.
Yeah.
It's, right now, we have a partnership opportunity, and I'm speaking on behalf of actually the sheriff's department, I guess, more than anybody, maybe EMS, because there's nobody else using it. But we always talk about how, well, there's dead spots in the county, Well, if moving forward, anybody's on that system, 10, 20 years from now, that's still gonna be an issue. It's not like we're just magically gonna get the service. So that's why I'm curious, if we pass up an opportunity with that tower, what's it gonna cost the taxpayers in the future? That was my question. You answered it, thank you.
yeah, and so twofold on that. If the county decides, hey, I want to invest in both, we're going to do their system, plus we want to add that site that's, sure, no, we don't have a problem with that. We'll still offer up that site. But in 10, 20 years, you're going to have radios that don't require radio sites. They're going to be using, they're actually, radios are already here that can use cellular sites as well as 800 sites. And so the idea of having to build out more sites in 5, 10, maybe even a couple of years, you won't need them. As a matter of fact, Whitley County Sheriff, they were looking at putting a site in South Whitley, tested some of the radios that use both 800 and LTE, And they're gonna invest in those radios rather than building a site. There's just no reason to build a radio site anymore.
Perfect. I hope we got through 99% of the questions. I'm sure there's unanswered stuff out there, but for the sake of time, we got the call to wrap it up. So I appreciate you guys being here, taking the questions, being in the hot seat, and thanks to all of you for your questions and participation.
Thank you guys. I want to thank Matt for stepping up and doing that for us as a middleman. Thank you guys for coming and showing your appreciation to our fire, our police, our EMS for doing their jobs. We just want everybody to be safe. So we wanted to do this informative meeting just to get some answers clarified and just see which one is the best system for us, and just give commissioners some answers and get us just be on a more even line with everybody. So we appreciate everybody being here, and that concludes our workshop.
But he even has channel.